Hi everyone, I am Rachel Gregoire and welcome to this short podcast on UK/US trade. Today, we will be specifically focusing on what the Intra-Industry Trade Index can tell us about the agricultural trade between the UK and the US after Brexit. To kick things off, in week 2 of our discussions, I decided to focus on the UK's trade in food, feed and drinks with the US. To understand this topic a bit more clearer, I decided I wanted to explore how these two countries closely work together to provide similar agricultural products. To do that, I decided to use the IIT Index, which is also known as the Intra-Industry Trade Index. This is a great way to see whether countries are trading similar products, meaning they both import and export items within the same industry. The formula is pretty straightforward, where X is exports and M imports. Now, looking at data from 2018 from the UK government, the total export of food, feed and drinks from the UK to the US stood at a whopping £2.4 billion. On the other side, imports from the US to UK was at £1.5 billion. After inputting the information into the formula, the sum worked out to be 0.769, roughly 77%. So, what does that actually mean? A score close to 1 simply implies that there's a two-way trade in similar products. In other words, both countries are buying and selling within the same sector. That's exactly what we see here. The UK and the US have a relatively high level of intra-industry trade in agriculture. They're not in just dumping goods into each other's markets. However, they're both actively engaged in exchanging products like processed foods, beverages, and agricultural raw materials. Now, let's look at what this means for policy point of view. Post-Brexit, the UK has more freedom to develop its own strategies outside of the European Union. This IIT score suggests a strong foundation that already exists for mutual trade in agriculture with the US. So instead of focusing on only finding new markets or products, the UK should be thinking about deepening their existing ties. There are a few practical steps that policymakers could take to make this happen. First, lower tariffs. If both the UK and the US agree on reducing tariffs on food and agricultural goods, both economies could benefit. UK farmers could get easier access to the US market, and American producers could find more opportunities in the UK. It's a win-win situation. Second, aligned standards. One of the biggest hurdles in food trade is differences in safety, packaging and quality standards. Harmonizing regulations, or at least recognizing each other's standards, would make a cross-border trade much easier, especially relevant in sectors like dairy or meat where regulations could be very strict. And lastly, encourage joint investment. Governments can do a lot to support collaboration between the UK and US food producers, whether it's in research, sustainable agriculture, or even logistics. Shared investments can make and create jobs to improve technology and open new markets. In conclusion, this intra-industry trade score gives us more than just a number. It's a signal that there's already a healthy balance trade relationship between the UK and the US. Instead of starting from scratch, the UK can build on the base to create a more stable, mutually beneficial trade environment post-Brexit. Thanks for tuning in, and I do hope that this short dive into the trade policy has helped put the numbers into perspective. See you next time.